authentication and authorization. Authentication versus authorization. Now, these two terms are often used together, but they answer two completely different questions. Authentication. Authentication asks, who are you? So this is authentication part and it asks, who are you? It is like asking your identity. When you sign in with your organizational Microsoft account, Microsoft Entra ID needs to verify that you're actually the person you claim to be. Now, that involves different things like a password. Your first thing is your user ID, a password, a multi-factor authentication, Windows Hello, right? And FIDO 2 if you're using uh, like a FIDO 2 for higher authentication assurance level, or any other supported method. Once you verified, you are authenticated. So this is the authentication part. So now you prove that you belong to this identity provider. Your identity provider knows it is you. Now let us come to the authorization part. So but knowing who you are is the only first step. The next question is, what are you allowed to access? That is authorization. So, for example, Entra ID may successfully authenticate you as an employee, but that does not mean you should have access to every application in the organization. You might be authorized to access Teams. Uh, uh, you might be authorized to access SharePoint. You might be authorized to access Salesforce, but some HR application which is there you might not be allowed to access, or some part of it you are not allowed to access. So authentication tells you who you are. Authorization determines what you are allowed to access. Now take a real world example. Now let us take this example. So you have an identity card, you verify your identity, but then do you have access to a specific area? You have proven your identity here, right? So someone knows that you are the part of the company. They will let you in through the main gate, but there are server rooms that you are not allowed to access. There are different parts of the building that you might not allow to be accessed. So that was a simple understanding of authentication versus authorization. Now, one important point for SSO, this distinction becomes particularly important when we talk about single sign on. When you sign in through an identity provider such as Microsoft Entra ID, authentication establishes your identity, but your successful authentication does not automatically mean that you can access every application. The organization still needs to determine whether you are authorized to access the particular application. For example, user authenticates. So authentication tells you who you are. So authentication, you have proven your identity, but then yes, it is simple. Then you go to applications to access the application. The authorization will tell you which application you can use and which you cannot use. So we have discussed it. Now that uh, so simple, this simple distinction in mind we should keep in the rest of the video. Authentication is who you are, and authorization is what you are allowed to access. Now that we understand these two concepts, we can look at how single sign-on actually works and where authentication and authorization fit into that process.